Hello there, my name is Ian Brutal Moose, and welcome to Moose 2, my second channel, where typically I upload stream archives, but not today. I've been making YouTube videos for 8 years now, and beyond that, I've just been making videos in general for a lot longer. 8 years is a really long time to be doing anything, honestly, but when it comes to video making, a lot has changed. Technology's changed, the platform has changed, and me personally, my budget has changed, and what I need a camera for has changed throughout the years. Lots of change. On top of that, I also just really like new cameras and fun gadgets. It's why you see me changing cameras, I change microphones. I like to change things up and try new things. So today we're just gonna hang out and I'm gonna talk about my different cameras, when I got them, why I got them, where I've used them, what I like and don't like about them. I'm just gonna talk cameras. Now before I get started, I should probably note that I did go to school for film and I learned a lot of camera jargon that I no longer remember. Since we didn't get a ton of hands-on experience, I didn't retain a lot of it. So I would say that I know a good amount about cameras, maybe more than average, but not as much as I probably should. I tend to just fiddle with settings until it looks good and then I leave it there. All right, now that my level of camera knowledge has been established, let's go back in time.
I've not seen such bravery.
So let's start at the very beginning. My earliest few YouTube videos actually didn't even feature me on camera at all. It was just me and some gameplay, that's about it. A quick side note to anyone who's looking to start an online career of some sort, I would say think twice before appearing on camera. It's a pretty big decision that might not seem like it at the time. I mean, back when I was making my first videos, there was really no way of knowing that YouTube would grow to be what it is today. But now that we have that knowledge, I don't know that I would have appeared on camera. It's a little weird to think about nowadays, my videos without an on-screen presence, but it's a pretty big decision, letting people know what you look like and, you know, your whereabouts. Think long and hard on that one. If I could go back, I don't know that I would do it differently, but I would definitely let my younger self know of the consequences. Regardless, I eventually hopped on screen, and I did that using a series of webcams, actually. I think there's a chance that I used my family's mini DV camcorder in some of the early videos, but not very often. Most of the time I was filming with either my MacBook Pro webcam, which is actually how I recorded some of my earlier audio as well.
Call of Duty. I love me a good game of Call of Duty.
But I also bought a Logitech 720p webcam, and at the time 720p was good enough for YouTube, so I figured I could use that for a while, and use it I did. I didn't actually purchase my first camera until a year after I started YouTube, and that was this Sony Handycam. I bought this one for about 180 bucks. It was an old model at the time anyway, it was already dated, but it was okay. I'm not gonna say it was great. I'm sure my main concerns at the time were something that films in 1080p, something that has a screen that flips out and flips around so I can see myself, and also my budget. I didn't have a huge budget at this point, I was just getting what I could afford. Now I'll be honest, enough time has passed that I don't have a ton of fond memories of using that Handycam. But I must have at least kind of liked it. I must have found it acceptable somehow, because I didn't buy another camera until 2015. I bet by then I had upgraded my webcam to something that shot in 1080p, so it's very likely that I was also still using the webcam as a camera. Now I do have fond memories of mounting my webcam to my tripod as if it were an actual camera. Whatever works. I mean, the people watching the videos didn't know, so what's the problem? But in 2015, I finally made the jump to something good, and that is this Canon Rebel EOS T3i. It's got a really stupidly long name. Canon EOS Rebel T3i. This is a DSLR camera, which stands for These cameras felt like a really, really big step at the time. This was pretty much a way to get film quality footage without needing to use film, and it was kind of affordable at the time. really hard to use the word affordable when nowadays our phones have cameras that are, better than most of these. But at the time, it was affordable. I'm pretty sure I picked this camera because my friend Jeff used it and recommended it. He may still use it for all I know. It's a good camera.
How do you feel about Tony Hawk Ride?
I fucking hate it.
In fact, this is a camera that I still regularly use, specifically in Brutal Foods videos, and I use it specifically because I really like how the footage looks. It really does just give you footage that kind of looks like film. It's got that grain, stuff isn't too sharp like maybe phone footage would be. And opposed to the Handycam that I was using before, it has a lot of options. It's a very complicated camera, but that means you can tweak a lot of little settings, which is good for people who want to tweak settings. I don't know what all of the settings do exactly, but you can tweak them. I still really love using the DSLR. I use it in my Brutal Foods videos, and honestly, I would still use it as my main camera if it weren't for a few of the setbacks. So let's talk about those. First off, you need a lot of light. I don't know if this is true for all DSLR cameras, but it's awful in low light situations. Awful. It's even awful in like normal light situations. When I bought this camera, I also bought really big softbox studio lights. And lights that size are pretty much what you need to get good footage out of that camera. And if you're filming in a small bedroom or a small kitchen perhaps, that might not be the easiest thing to achieve. I will take a moment to say this. All cameras need light. If you're starting out with a camera, you can't get the footage to look good, try filling your scene with some more lights. Even with this just simple shot, I've got 2 lights going, all these background lights. You need lights to film a video. It's just with some cameras, you need less. Now, another problem I ran into with this DSLR is that even though it has a flip-out screen, focusing became a problem. This camera does not have continual autofocus when filming video, which means that it has to be manually set before I hit record, which is really hard to do when you work alone. So I needed to find a way to manually focus the camera even though I couldn't do that while sitting where I was supposed to sit. So what I'd do is I'd set up the camera and I would put an object where I was planning on standing or sitting, and I would focus the camera on that, and that worked okay. Eventually what I did though was I picked up a remote control for this camera, and I would sit down and I would swap it into photo mode, and I would focus the camera and it would take a picture, and then I would hit the record button. And anytime I moved, I would stop, focus the camera, hit record. And that worked pretty well. But there was still one really frustrating problem with this camera. This camera will only record for about 30 minutes before it automatically stops recording. And that's not because it's overheating or something, it just stops. Again, this is just as I remember it happening, but I think what happened is that Canon wanted to designate these as just regular cameras, because if you designate it as a camcorder, there are more expensive import taxes or something bad like that. They didn't want this to be considered a video camera for whatever reason. So to work around that, they just don't let you record video for very long. 30 minutes is not very long. I know it sounds like a long time, like a 30-minute video is a really long video, but I probably film 5 hours for a 30-minute video. 30 minutes is not long enough to film. So what ends up happening is you get midway through a take, it stops recording, but you don't notice because you're not looking at the little monitor, and then it's gone, it's nowhere. So that was and continues to be my biggest issue with that camera. Maybe there's a workaround. Maybe there's a way to flash the camera software so that it will record past that 30-minute threshold, but I don't know how to do it. It's stupid either way. So to sum up the Canon EOS Rebel T3i, in my experience, it can get some really good looking footage if you got enough light. I don't think it's worth the hassle if you're planning on filming yourself for videos though. I think this one's probably outdated. In fact, I know it's outdated because I have better options, like the one I'm using right now. In December of 2017, I purchased a mirrorless camera, a Sony Alpha 6000. I can't hold this one because it's the one I'm using to film this video, but it's pretty awesome. The big draw to these mirrorless cameras is that they're so small but can get such good video. It's pretty wild. The main two reasons I upgraded from the DSLR to the mirrorless camera were the record limits and the autofocus. Both were really big hurdles for making YouTube videos alone. And while the A6000 that I got does not have a flip out screen, it makes up for it with a really great continuous autofocus feature. It follows my face, it keeps me in focus most of the time. I gotta stop myself right there. You might have noticed already, but while filming this video, the one in which I bragged about this camera's autofocus feature, the focusing is terrible. I just keep getting out of focus. I usually don't have that problem with this camera. I think the issue is that I'm sitting in front of an unusually busy background and I'm also off center. That's all I can think of. I definitely set the camera to focus on things on my side of the screen, so I'm not sure why I had all these issues, but I just find it funny. Literally the one time this camera has given me focus issues, and it's in the video where I'm bragging about it. So there you go. Maybe I need to start looking for a camera with better autofocus features. I don't know. Anyway, back to the video. It also does better in lower light than the DSLR did, which is great for me. It means I have to bring in less light when I need to film, which is fantastic. So it does continuous autofocus and it records past 30 minutes, but I needed to solve a couple of problems I had with it right off the bat. Firstly, when I say it records past 30 minutes, asterisk that. It will record past 30 minutes if it does not overheat, which it tends to do. And that was a problem that I didn't know that the camera had until I actually bought it, so I kind of ended up solving the problem but then hitting the same problem right after. It was very frustrating. So we've got this overheating issue where it'll only record for 30 minutes or so, and on top of that, there's no flip out screen, so I can't see myself to center the shot. Well, it turns out that the solution to both of those problems is the same thing. The Atomos Ninja Flame. This is a product that my buddy Paul from Continue clued me in on when I was having all of these issues with my brand new mirrorless camera. So firstly, it's a monitor. It lets me see what's going on the screen, and I usually place it in front of me somewhere. In some Brutal Foods, you get a pretty good look at it. But on top of that, it's actually recording the video you're watching right now. The camera itself does no recording. It simply sends the picture into this little screen here, and I hit record. And so, since the camera is not actually doing any recording itself, it doesn't heat up, so it doesn't overheat. Now, if you really want to set up a camera to run for really long periods of time, you're going to want to pick up one of these, a USB power brick, which is currently powering this camera. Pretty sure I got this just because I wasn't satisfied with the Alpha 6000's battery, but now, I mean, it'll run all day. So this setup right here, the Sony A6000, the Atomos Ninja Flame, and the USB power brick, that is my current video setup. When I record a video in HD, that's how I do it. Usually set those three things up. I got a light here, set my audio up, usually through my computer, or I record it directly into the Ninja Flame, and then I hit record and go. And then I talk, and then I edit out all the stupid things that I said. But now it's time for the cons of this camera. What do I not like about it? Turns out there's only one thing, and it has to do with the continuous autofocus. While the autofocus is very good at keeping me in focus, it does something that I don't really like. Since the camera is continuously focusing, if you look at the sections of the image where it's not focusing, you get this weird jitter. I don't think it's very noticeable on a YouTube video unless you're looking for it, but it really bothers me. Overall though, I don't think it's too distracting, and until I find a camera that has an autofocus that doesn't do that, I'll probably just stick with this one. Honestly, the image is just so good, I don't really see a reason to upgrade to anything else. Do you really need me in any more definition? No. But even though this is my main camera, it's the most high definition camera I own, It's not the last camera I purchased. In fact, I purchased 8 more cameras after this one. So let's take a look. In June of 2018, I picked up this Panasonic Lumix point-and-shoot camera. At first glance, this seems like an odd choice. The concept of a point-and-shoot camera is outdated at best. I bet you don't see many of these out in the wild anymore. Like, why not just use your phone? Why are you gonna carry this around if you've got a phone, right? Well, you probably already know where I'm going with this one, but the reason I got this was for Brutal Foods. It's the Ian Cam. I stick it on a little tripod, I hold it in my hand, I set it up to point at things. It's very convenient, and it delivers some pretty great footage. If you got enough light, that is. Low light is another story. I was really just looking for a cheap and easy extra camera angle for Brutal Foods. I don't really know who I would recommend the Lumix to, unless you were specifically searching for a point-and-shoot camera that shot decent footage. If that's what you're looking for, maybe look into the Lumixes. Lumixes. Now let's take a jump to 2019 when I start doing some more out in the wild videos. I do the treasure hunt video, got some arcade series videos. What cameras am I using for those? As a matter of fact, I tried out a number of cameras specifically looking for one that films well in a public place discreetly. Maybe not completely hidden, but discreetly. The first of which is this DJI Osmo Pocket. This is a very interesting little camera in that it is part Campbell, part Grambra. I mean, it's part gimbal, part camera. You know, you've got the little lens at the end there, but see how when I rotate it, the camera itself stays upright? So the whole idea is that this one you don't need a gimbal for because it is the gimbal. A gimbal is something that you put a camera on to steady a handheld shot, by the way. This little camera is super neat. Practical usability, I don't really know. It's a very neat little camera though. So other than being a weird camera gimbal fusion, another reason I got this one was because of how small it was in the hand. You know, phones are kind of obnoxious to hold because they're very horizontal, but since this is such a vertical camera, most of it is actually hidden in the hand. Only the lens really pops out. So to me, that feels way less intrusive to film when you're out and about. I don't think people would notice that as much, in my opinion, but it did have some issues. Firstly, the video quality is iffy. I'm not gonna say it's bad, it's just not fantastic. I also remember it behaving a little weird in one of my arcade videos with some flashing lights. It didn't like some of the lights in the arcade. So in that low light mixed with flashing lights situation, it did not perform super well. Another problem is that this camera didn't really feel complete out of the box. I had to buy some add-ons. Specifically, a wireless module that lets you control the camera with your phone, which is very helpful. And also this hunk of plastic that gives you a little scroll wheel so panning the camera is easier. Without this scroll wheel, it's really hard to do on the touch screen. It's just a pain. Another problem is that it's kind of hard to travel with. I mean, it just doesn't seem sturdy. The little camera on the gimbal thing, like you don't want this just in a bag among with other things. It does come with a travel case, but it's not very intuitive, and if you have add-ons to the device, it won't fit in, so kind of a bummer on the clunkiness side. There is a DJI Pocket 2 now that seems to address some of these complaints, but I don't think I need another one. I think one is fine. One thing that this camera can do that's really cool is it can face you and track your face. And since I don't have a cameraman, I'm just filming myself, it's really my one opportunity for some type of moving shot. I haven't taken advantage of this very much yet, the opportunity just hasn't presented itself, but if you watch my last food video, you'll definitely notice a couple times where the camera moves while I'm in frame, but I'm still filming alone. That's how I did it, it's with that little guy there. It's pretty good. It's good for stable shots. If you're gonna be outdoors in bright light, the footage is gonna look way better. Obviously, I would look at the sequel to this camera before I would look at this one, So if you're interested, maybe check out the DJI 2. So I've got my DJI Osmo Pocket, but I'm really still not comfortable filming out and about. I still feel like there's gotta be a better way. So that's when I start investing into some GoPros. I've got 3 GoPros actually. I've got a GoPro Hero 7 Black, a GoPro Hero 8 Black, and I've got a GoPro Hero 5 Session, which has yet to be used. At this point, I'm basically just looking for better ways to film in an arcade. I have this feeling that I'm gonna do more arcade videos, or at least go outside more, maybe to some more thrift stores, but I want something that I can film with without really having to interact with it all that much. GoPro was the answer. Specifically the 7 and 8 Black. These two are really great cameras. Firstly, they're small, so if you're holding this out and about, really not that big, you can put it in your pocket real quick. It's just a really great size. It also has really great stabilization features. That's something that's really important to me because I just have a hard time walking stable. I guess I wobble around a lot. I have no idea. You can get some really smooth footage out of the Hero 7, but man, the Hero 8 looks awesome. They developed this thing called something or another, Hyper Smooth or something. It's pretty crazy how smooth a little camera can be. I mean, you can shake the camera and watch the image stay still. It's pretty crazy. The video quality is good. It's decent. It's fine. Once again, if you have enough light, it's gonna look way better. In low light, it's just okay. But for YouTube, it's just fine. You don't need a mirrorless camera to make videos for YouTube. You just don't need it. The video quality is pretty great for such a small camera, especially because it can record in higher frame rates. And of course, it's got that stabilized footage. It just looks nice. If you're worried about the fisheye lens, you can actually flatten out the image. You don't have to film in a super wide angle, though that is helpful too. It's nice to get everything in a shot. The GoPro 8 has this advantage of also having a built-in camera mount. The GoPro 7 and earlier, you actually had to put the camera in a mount. This one just has the attachments built right in, which is super neat. And that's how I do my store shopping. I actually wear a GoPro harness, I attach it, and I just walk around. I would say that works pretty well. It would work even better if I could remind myself to walk a bit more steady instead of, clomping around the grocery store. But once I get the hang of that, it's gonna look super nice. Downsides gonna be audio. The audio is bad. It's not good. So I realized I hadn't actually tried out the GoPro 8's audio in quite some time, so maybe the microphone is actually better than I remember it being. So here's a little test. Test, 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 test. But I typically don't use the audio when I use these cameras, so it's not a big problem for me. When I film my grocery segments, I actually wear a lavalier mic under my shirt, and that's the audio I use when I occasionally use said audio. It's not even like a ball, it's like a triangle lump. I don't think I've ever used the built-in GoPro audio in a video. There's just no reason to do it unless it's your only option. I've heard that the Hero 9 actually has a pretty decent mic though, so who knows? I would probably still use an external just because I have the equipment for it already. But yeah, GoPros, I would say you can't beat them as a out and about cam, a travel cam. They're really cool. In addition to that, you can put them in really fun places. You can stick them to your windshield, like for my road trip video. You can stick them on a fork, like my fork cam and my food videos. You can get really creative with a GoPro because of just how tiny it is. So they're a lot of fun. So far in my camera journey, I'm really focused on quality. I want good looking footage. With the GoPros, I'm looking for function, I'm looking for travel, but I'm still looking for, nice looking footage. This year that changed. In 2020, I started going the opposite direction. In February of this year, I picked up the Panasonic Reporter. This is my VHS camera. I love this thing. I picked it up specifically for my Mystery Tapes show, which is a show where I talk about VHS tapes and I want it to be filmed on VHS for authenticity's sake. I think it looks really cool. This is an insanely plasticky camera. Out of all the cameras I have, this one is the most plastic. It almost looks like a toy. Like when you look at it up close, it almost looks like a play school toy just because of how it feels, how it sounds. It just is plastic. Another problem I have with this camera specifically is that the audio is very unreliable. It records this microphone right here maybe 1 out of every 10 times I hit the record button, so I don't use it at all. I don't know that you would really want to use this microphone anyway. I think nowadays, even if you're filming on a crappy camera, you want your audio to sound a little bit better than what the technology of the time was offering. So not a huge loss there. It is a little bit of a pain though, because even if I don't use a camera's audio in the final mix, I do use it to sync up camera footage using those using those audio wave peaks to align the footage is very helpful. So when it doesn't record audio, it's kind of a pain. If you ever notice my VHS camera footage lagging a little behind my audio or something, that's why. It's because it doesn't record the audio, so it's hard to manually sync. It's been a lot of fun to use though. Obviously, there are a couple challenges. Firstly, there's no flip out screen. And on my A6000, that's not a problem because it has an HDMI output. HDMI wasn't quite as popular back then, so it doesn't have one. So to get around that little issue, I use the camera's audio-video outputs. I run that through an upscaler, which then runs to my computer. So my computer becomes my preview monitor. Another issue I've got with this camera is the battery, which on one hand is very cool. It's like this really big brick that you just plug into the camera. It's very satisfying to use, but it doesn't work. This camera came with a battery. It came with a charger as well. I think the battery just has no charge. So maybe getting a new battery for this camera would help, but it doesn't really fix anything because I still have to be tethered to my computer to see what I'm filming. So what's the problem with being tethered to the wall, right? I actually think that that makes this my most limiting camera. It can really only be used in a single room unless I'm the one behind it. I guess I could always just ask a friend to help me film something, but that doesn't sound like me. Having someone film for you is so embarrassing. Like, I just sit here and ramble for 5 hours. I don't need someone in the room when I'm doing that. So the Panasonic the Panasonic VHS Reporter, one of my favorite cameras. It has a number of glaring flaws, but it's still just really cool. I love filming directly on VHS. Everybody's got the Red Giant VHS plugin. Everybody can make your footage look like this, but it's not the same. I still use this filter. Of course, I still use these effects here and there. I just really like the authenticity of filming on VHS. It gives it a look that you can't really replicate. Is it worth all the hassle? I don't know. For me, it is. For you, I don't know. Because another thing you got to think about with these tape cameras is when you capture the footage, you actually have to play back the entire tape. So I sit down, I film for a couple hours, and then I can't just start editing the footage. I actually have to sit down and play back all that footage just to get it on the computer. It's a labor of love, but I love it. And so that takes me to possibly my current favorite camera, the Sony something or another. The Sony DSR PD150. This camera records not on VHS, but on mini DV, and it produces some of my favorite looking footage out of any of these cameras. It's somewhere in between the HD footage of a DSLR and the VHS footage of the Panasonic, somewhere in between there. It just looks really cool to me. Now, before I started making videos for YouTube and I was just making videos for fun, I used a camera a lot like this at home. This would have been the professional version that I, really wanted to get but couldn't afford at the time. But I was recording on a mini DV camcorder, not too unlike this one. That's why I think I really like this one a lot. It's very nostalgic just to use. I find the process just really fun. Now, you're still dealing with tapes, so it's still kind of a hassle to get your footage onto the PC, but that's really one of my only complaints. It's got a flip-out screen so you can see where you're at. It's got 2 XLR inputs for better audio. As a matter of fact, it actually doesn't have built-in audio, so if you want audio, you're gonna need a microphone to attach to this thing, but that wasn't a problem for me. It records in both widescreen and full screen, and honestly, the footage looks really good. Even in low light, it's pretty impressive what kind of images this thing can capture. But there's always downsides to working with tapes, always. Tapes are unreliable. On top of that, you have to worry about like the playheads. So when you record a thing or you play a thing, that tape is running through a thing, and that thing can break or break the tape. I actually do currently have an issue with this one where I'm getting artifacts on these mini DV tapes, specifically at the beginning or end of a tape, and I'm not 100% sure why that is. I have a feeling it's because the playheads are dirty or misaligned. It's gotta be misaligned though, because I've used a couple of cleaning tapes. Yes, there are mini DV cleaning tapes where their sole purpose is you play them through the cassette player and it cleans those playheads as it plays, but that did not solve my issue. And mini DV camera repair is becoming harder and harder to find. I've actually emailed a couple people about this camera in particular, and not only, did they not help me out, but I haven't even been getting responses. So that says to me that they're either getting so much business that they just can't keep up with all these broken mini DV camcorders, or maybe they're not in business anymore. I'd believe either. But then there's one more camera here, a little mini DV camera. It's my most recent and also my least used. So far I've only used this in my Hungry Man 2 video as a Ian cam, which I don't know that I'll do again. I like having the mini DV footage in there just because I think it looks cool. But the Panasonic Lumix is really better for that situation because it has a wider angle lens. This one I kept having to like really hold far away from stuff just to fit everything in the screen. So I don't know that I'll use it for that purpose again. Actually, I mainly use this camera to capture tapes onto my computer. Since mini DV tapes are digital tapes, it actually doesn't matter too much which camera you play them back in, so oftentimes I will hook this one up to my computer to capture a tape while I am actively filming another tape on this camera. That way I can capture footage that I've already got while filming new footage on another tape. Having a camera like this is pretty helpful. And that's probably what I'll keep using this one for. The batteries don't hold a huge charge, honestly. I'm surprised I got through a full Hungry Man video with it. But I'll probably go back to the Lumix in the next one. I guess another camera I have is my phone camera. I actually specifically upgraded my phone to get a great camera for on-the-go or spontaneous filming. It's a Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus, I think. People are used to seeing phones. If you're filming with your phone, I don't think people tend to think twice about it. So I decided to try with my phone. On top of that, this one was specifically known for having really good image stabilization, and when you're walking around, you really want to smooth out that image as much as you can without having to do like a warp stabilizer, because then it looks terrible. I like filming with my phone, except that I really don't like filming with my phone at all. Publicly or privately, it just feels weird to me to film with a phone. It feels like I'm trying to document something to put on Twitter or something. It just doesn't feel right to me. But the footage is great. I mean, honestly, the phone's camera outperforms a number of these cameras over here, so it's a great choice if you're looking for a phone camera. The phone itself is huge, and you would have to film with a phone to film with the phone. But if that's okay with you, then it's a good phone camera. I think the best feature of having a good phone camera, though, is that it's always with you. So you never know when you're gonna see something to take a picture of or to film for a video or something. It's just good to have. At the end of the day, though, I used my phone as a camera way less than I intended to. I actually ended up buying more cameras instead. So, that's it, I think. Didn't come into this video with much structure. In fact, the only notes I have are the dates that I bought these cameras on. But I hope it was an enjoyable watch anyway. If there's anything else you'd like for me to talk about, be it a step in my video making process or just something you'd like for me to talk about, let me know, and I might do that. Also, if this was a bad experience, let me know that as well. Bye!